Hello, everyone, and welcome to our August Hope session, Making and Mindfulness for the Moment. I'm Heidi Parker. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Community Initiatives Manager for Arts and Healing Initiative, and I am your Zoom host for today. This program is presented as part of our free Hope series online for people everywhere, which we created to support the resilience of our global community through social emotional arts. Each workshop offers a supportive space for connection, healing, and empowerment as we navigate the changes in our world. If you have previously attended a Hope session, welcome back. If you are new, thanks for joining today. We're grateful you're all here to create, learn, and grow together as a community. Today's program is in a meeting format, so please keep yourself muted until prompted otherwise. We are recording today's session in speaker view, and we'll pause during any reflection to be shared on our YouTube channel. And you are welcome to leave your cameras on as you feel comfortable, as we'd love for you to actively participate. Our session today is scheduled for an hour and a half, and feel free to add any questions in the chat or use your raise hand function. So before we begin today, we would like to start by acknowledging the Tongva Nation, on whose land the city of Los Angeles, where we are based, rests today. We hold respect and gratitude for the Tongva people who still consider themselves the caretakers of this land. And by their example, we are reminded of our responsibility to our planet and to one another. So let's take a moment in our own way to honor the Indigenous communities of past and present on whose land you are joining from today. I'd like to welcome today's presenter. Michelle Holt is the founder of Creative Compassionate. She is a bold, creative, and love-drenched voice in the world of educational change. She's an artist, a mother of three, a passionate advocate leading for love with a capital L and creativity with a capital C. She's the author of Radiance, The Art of Self-Love. The co-producer of Arts is The Root. And she was the founding executive director of Arts Ed Matters and the Arts and Restorative Learning Coordinator for the San Mateo County Office of Education, and she holds multiple degrees and credentials in education, including a BA in Drama and Human Development from Harvard. She truly embodies living an arts-driven life, and she makes creative practice accessible for all she reaches. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to spotlight myself for now because my slide deck is embedded. I'm embedded into my slide deck. I'm using a program called and so I'm inside my slide deck. So thanks for that introduction. And I'm so honored and so excited to be with everyone today. So grateful. Thank you for joining. And thanks, Heidi, for that introduction. I have a couple of other things to share in terms of fun facts about myself. I just moved a year ago from San Francisco to Albuquerque, New Mexico. I am a new homeowner, and I say I'm a first generation homeowner. My parents didn't own a home, so I'm proud and excited to own a home, especially as a single mom working in arts education. And as Heidi mentioned, I'm a mom of three young adults. I have a 15-year-old daughter here with me. I have a 19-year-old daughter in Honolulu, Hawaii, and a 24-year-old transgender daughter in upstate New York. I love making art journals. I'll talk a little bit about that later. I'm also the daughter of two blind parents. I grew up very low income, and but I had a very arts-rich education growing up. I had theater and dance and music and visual arts throughout my K-8 education. And as well as my in a large urban public school, I sought out the drama and dance teachers and ended up as an undergraduate at Harvard, where I created my own major in theater and child psychology and education. So that's a little bit about my background. Sort of, who is this woman that's presenting for you today? So I'm the founder of Creative Compassionate. We stand for vibrant, healthy humans at closing the creativity gap and sharing human-centered strategies. I was a drama teacher for 20 plus years, working mostly in elementary schools. And then I moved over 13 years ago doing more teacher professional development, teaching workshops in how to integrate drama into the classroom curriculum, and also teaching a workshop called The Art of Self-Care. And teaching mindfulness. I'm trained as a restorative practices facilitator. I'll be speaking and we'll be practicing a little bit of both of those later throughout the workshop. But I was sort of starting to gather all these tools up, and unbeknownst to me and unbeknownst to any of us, I was sort of gathering up these self-care tools as a response to stress, as a response to going through major life changes. I had left my marriage, I had left my teaching position, I had founded a nonprofit, all within a few years of each other. And I've started to gather up these tools to help sort of take better care of myself. But unbeknownst to me, those tools would then become extremely useful once the pandemic hit, and since then. And speaking of since then, we have really been, in many ways, running on stress chemicals. We were already running on stress chemicals, but then we walked through a collective trauma. The pandemic itself was a trauma, and it was a trauma that sort of happened each day, getting up in the morning and knowing, for at least a year and a half that we were not able to, feel safe walking at our front door, connecting with loved ones, or doing the things, doing our day-to-day. Our lives dramatically changed for that period of time. And what I'm noticing and what around me, both in education, but also just out in the world, is that that impact, that trauma is still sort of rippling out and impacting our mental health. And so I really hope that today, what you take away are some creative and compassionate strategies, little things that you can do for yourself for 2 minutes, for 5 minutes, for just a little short period of time in which you can just connect with self. But also some of these strategies are ways to connect with each other. So I say we start with the self, and then we work out from there and we work with each other. And that if we're not starting with the self, then there's a breakdown often in how we connect with each other. So we'll start with the self today. So speaking of starting with the self, I'm inviting you to collect what I call comfort tools. So for you, a comfort tool might be a warm drink, or for me, I've got my bottle of water. I'm definitely encouraging and inviting everyone as part of your comfort tools, and even if it's not your typical comfort tool, to have art supplies around, whether that's just a pencil or a pen, a piece of paper, anything that you like to sort of, that you can make marks with. We are going to be doing some drawing, we're going to be doing some writing, and so you definitely need pen and paper no matter what. But I also invite you to sort of use that pen and paper as you're experiencing the workshop, even if we're not doing a directed piece that is about drawing or writing. But if there's a moment where I'm just talking, to just doodle, to just move your hands. There's so much neuroscience that shows that when we are moving our hands, we're making meaning, that the neurons are firing together and wiring together. I also love the quote from Resmaa Menakem, who wrote My Grandmother's Hands, and I hope I'm pronouncing their name right. Our hands are the antenna to our soul. So that when you're making, when you're drawing, when you're making art, when you're painting, when you're playing a musical instrument, when you're baking or cooking, when you're working in the garden, when you're doing carpentry, when you're playing a musical instrument, when you're petting your cat, when you're doing anything with your hands, it's like you're connecting with your own soul, your own spirit. So, and today is really about, and all my workshops really are about sort of coming home to you. So moving your hands is a way that I'm inviting you to just engage today. And then of course, I'll invite you, and I'm inviting you to participate. So my workshops will have, some of me talking, but they're very, very hands-on. They're participatory in the sense that we're all in our own individual spaces at home or in our office. And so, but I'm still going to sort of be asking you to be doing things, whether that's drawing, writing, meditating. And so I ask you to participate. Okay, so speaking of doing and making and so forth, one of the things that I'm most known for among some of my colleagues and friends are the fact that I make artful journals. So I basically take a blank book and I hack it. I call it hacking it or building it. So what you see here on the screen, I'm going to disappear for just a moment, are some pages where I'm actually planning to build, or was planning and then did build a bunch of books from scratch, using recycled papers, using old maps, using wrapping paper, using even shopping bags, packaging from food, old boxes, paper that's sort of, not too thin, not too thick, but a collection of paper. And then all of those books, I punched holes in them and I bound them with ribbon. But sometimes, and now I'm going to make myself way bigger and sort of fill up more of the screen, sometimes I just get a blank book. So I'm hoping that you can see me and you can see my blank book. And so what I do, I call it hacking. And I just sort of glue random scraps, and then I write in my books and I draw in my books. Or this one I took an art class. So my books become a place of refuge, a safe place to go, somewhere I can go and just hang out, that's welcoming, that are full of sort of synchronicities and miracles and magic. I might make the book, and then 6 months later, I actually use the book to write in. So then some of the writing starts to happen in the book. And then they become a dialogue. So the books become a dialogue where I might be taking a workshop and I hear someone share something, and all of a sudden that thing is actually reflected in my book. Now, when I lead workshops in person with participants, I give them something more simple, like just a little brown notebook, and we just do simple, I give pre-cut out materials, and we just glue. One thing I like to do is I like to add what I call tabs at the top of the notebooks, or the side, so they stick out. And then we draw in them, we write in them, we play in them. I was just actually doing some work with some 5th graders this morning, and they were working in those notebooks that I just shared with you. So I share that with you because it's my practice, and I'm going to speak in another moment about the idea of having a practice. But here's a page of one of my notebooks. I'm going to make myself disappear again for a moment. So that's an opening page where I put some of my favorite tidbits, things that are most meaningful to me, so that when I open the notebook, before I even start writing, I'm reminded of all of the sort of important messages I want to remind myself of. So that's a page in a notebook that I created a long time ago. I'm going to ask Heidi after the workshop to share this with you, which is a handout on how to hack your journal. So that will get sent to you. And we're actually not going to be doing the hacking today. I'm just sharing it with you as a resource and as a practice that you could potentially try on your own. Now, if you happen to have any little bits and scraps around you and a glue stick, please feel free and go ahead. That's one of the things I'm known for with my workshops. My camera's being very funny, and I don't know why it keeps having me move around, but hopefully it's not too distracting. But I just will have little bits and scraps of paper around, and I'll grab them with my glue stick, whether I'm listening to a podcast or I'm taking a class or I'm sitting in a meeting, and I'm just sort of known for gluing my bits and scraps in. But so the making of the journals for me is a practice. And that's one of the things that when I sort of speak about how the importance of making in general, or having a practice, is, again, back to the antenna for the soul. What is it that you have? What is your practice that's meaningful to you? So, for example, maybe yours is playing a musical instrument. Maybe yours is gardening. Maybe yours is baking, some of the things that I listed earlier. Maybe yours is even just walking your dog. Maybe yours is sketching. Maybe yours is stamp collecting. Anything at all, but a practice that when you do it, it fills you up, and that it's nurturing to your soul, nurturing to you. And often what I find is that when people will say, oh, I have that thing that I love doing, but I don't have enough time for it. So my invitation to you is, how can you make more time for it? How can you integrate it into your life? I'm not necessarily a huge fan of Tony Robbins, although I think he's taught some really great things. And one thing I learned from one of his workshops was this idea, he calls it NET, no extra time. So where can that thing integrate into your life? So like I was realizing I had all these books on Audible, but I wasn't listening to them. So I started integrating listening to them when I was driving or walking. And I'm sure many of you do that, or when I'm washing dishes. So maybe many of you already have that practice of sort of something you want to listen to while you're doing a chore, folding laundry, cooking dinner. How do you make that experience more pleasurable and part of your practice? Or for example, if there is an art practice or a mindfulness practice that you take away from today's workshop that you want to, you feel like you don't have enough time, you want to integrate it into your life. Well, what if you're facilitating a meeting? Or what if you are an educator and you're leading a workshop? Or what if you are, sitting around the dinner table with your family? How could you integrate that strategy that takes 3 minutes, that takes 5 minutes? Hey, everybody, let's draw a picture before we have dinner. Or hey, everyone, let's practice a gratitude ritual. Or hey, everyone, let's take a moment of silence. Where are these places that you can just sort of insert little moments that help you to recharge, that help you to ground, that help you to center? So my practice, my main one is artful journal making, but I'll be taking you through several others today. So here we go. So I asked you to have pen and paper nearby, and I asked you to have pen and paper nearby so that we could scribble. And I'm sure your reaction may be like, really? We're going to scribble? What? Really? That's what we're going to do now? But yes, that's what we're going to do. We're going to scribble just like we were 2 or 3 or 4 years old. Scribbling is just a warm-up. It's just moving the pen and paper across the page. And by scribbling, I literally mean scribbling. There's my scribbles. So we're just going to scribble. I'm going to show you a couple more examples of some scribbles. Here's some more scribbles, or actually just those are my 2 examples, that one and this one, just like when you were a toddler. Scribbling. So we're not even trying to doodle. We're not actually trying to make a shape like a heart or a circle or a rectangle. We're just scribbling, moving the pen across the page as a warm-up. So I invite you just to grab the pen, the marker, just take a few moments. Heidi, if you would be so kind as to put that music back on that we had earlier as guests were arriving while we're scribbling, that would be awesome. I'd be super grateful to you. And we're just going to scribble just for a minute or 2. And while you're scribbling, maybe take a breath. Just let yourself arrive here in this space. We're going to find some more ways to arrive. We're just moving the pen across the page. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you. I've removed myself from the spotlight because I'm about to share my screen. I'm going to share a very short video with all of you. It's about 2.5 minutes long. So if Heidi, if it's okay with you, if you could turn off the music. Perfect. I actually want to thank someone who's here in the room with me today. My colleague Melanie Rick shared this video with me, and it's just been really impactful. I've been watching it. I shared it with these 5th graders this morning. And so I'm going to share this short video with you. It's an artist named Chantel Martin. And we're just going to check out the way she talks about sort of making meaning, exploration of self, and the use of lines. Here we go. As we saw in that video, Chantel Martin was talking about her drawings were a way of creating a space. So earlier I shared my journals, and they metaphorically for me are a space. I think of them a little bit like in therapy, they use the word container. They're a container. They are a metaphor also for sort of coming home to me. One of my things that I focus on when I need a sort of little tenderness is this idea of come home to my own heart. As Heidi read in my bio, I stand for L, love with a capital L. And so I think a lot about sort of how do we come home to our own hearts? How do we come home in sort of a compassionate way? Well, Chantel Martin was talking about the use of drawing, the use of scribbling. So we're going to practice a couple of different drawing techniques right now. And one of them is drawing spirals. So we scribbled already. So now we're going to try drawing spirals. This warm-up I learned from Linda Berry, who's a professor at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And her rule for drawing spirals is you put the pen down on the paper and you start drawing a line that goes around itself, around and around itself. And the rule is the lines should stay close to each other and not touch each other. And so you just keep extending that spiral and extending that spiral, going around and around. And then the only other rule is that when you get to the edge of the page, pick up the pen and start over. So as you can see, I'm starting to draw a spiral. So just drawing a spiral, you could say well, it's like the inside of a tree trunk. But it's just, for me, it's also a mindful practice, a way to be here and present in the moment. Just allowing ourselves to focus on one thing and to have that pen just move. Round and around on the page. Make sure you're breathing. That's something I have to remind myself sometimes. Spiral, spiral, just spiraling. Nice job. One spiral, here's another spiral we find in nature. You can keep spiraling. I'm just going to chat with you a little bit about mindfulness while you're spiraling. And then we're going to practice some mindfulness. Drawing spirals is a form of practicing mindfulness. Mindfulness is the ability to be in the present moment and to respond versus react. I first took up a mindful practice, as I mentioned earlier, I talked about when I started to create a self-care practice. My mindful practice I first took up when I had newly left my teaching position, had founded a nonprofit to advocate for more arts in schools, and had left my marriage. So now I was a single mom, and I had about 4 consulting projects, and getting 3 kids up for school. I had 3 young, young to middle-aged kids. When I got up in the morning, I had to make 8 different meals each morning because everyone wanted something different for breakfast, including me, and everyone wanted something different for lunch, and then drive them to 3 different schools, and then go myself sometimes to 3 different schools before I picked them up. And I thought, well, maybe I'm going to try meditation. But I thought, I can't sit still. I'm from the East Coast. My mind goes too fast. I might live in California. I was living in California at the time, but my mind goes too fast. But I just started taking like 5 minutes each morning, just sitting on the sofa, 5 minutes, just sitting there quietly. Taking those 5 minutes just to be present with myself, to be quiet. So, and the more and more I started practicing mindfulness, and the more and more I started taking just those 5 minutes each morning, the change was cumulative, incremental, and cumulative. It just slowly, the more and more I practiced it, the more I was able to be mindful throughout the day, the more I started to cultivate a practice of responding versus reacting. It helped me cultivate more gratitude. It helped me practice loving kindness, to practice compassion for myself and others, to intentionally reach for joy, and so much more, just slowly over the years of practicing mindfulness. Now, I actually practice Julia Cameron's morning pages. I get up every morning and I write 3 pages. And so I'm not sitting on the sofa, but I feel like I am taking moments of mindfulness throughout the day. And I'll talk a little later in the workshop about some of the other things that my mindful practice has helped support in terms of my creative practice. But right now, we're going to practice some mindfulness together as a group. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. And if you're not comfortable closing your eyes, you can keep drawing spirals. So those are the 2 options I give. If you're not comfortable closing your eyes, well, you could also do what we call a soft gaze, where you just kind of look down at the floor or look off into space, but not really focusing too much on one object. And I'm going to ring the bowl. And invite you just to arrive right here, right now. Maybe noticing your breath, but not trying to control it. Or maybe noticing how your clothing feels against your skin, or your sit bones in their chair. Mindfulness is not about completely emptying the mind. It's just allowing the mind to be there. Our mind will think thoughts the way our heart beats and pumps blood. Mindfulness researchers estimate that we have 50 to 60,000 thoughts a day. And many of them are reruns. Thoughts are like weather. You just pass through. My favorite mindfulness instructor, Vinnie Ferraro, he says, "You have nowhere to go, nothing to do, and no one to be." Maybe that sounds terrifying, or maybe that sounds liberating. But right now, you have nowhere to go, nothing to do, and no one to be. I'm going to practice a bit of a mindfulness meditation that I learned in a workshop with Kristen Neff. I've entitled it, "What Would You Say to a Friend?" But I'm going to invite you now to consider something in your life that you've maybe been struggling with, something that's felt difficult. Or maybe it's just top of mind and you're perseverating or worrying about it or fixated on it. Maybe you had an argument with a spouse, or maybe someone you love is struggling with some form of physical or mental illness. Maybe there's some financial worries, or maybe you're considering leaving your job or just did. Maybe someone passed away, or maybe you just made a big move. Maybe you really miss a friend that you had a falling out with. Just something that feels like a struggle or difficult or painful, worrisome. And when you consider that situation, that experience, where do you feel it in your body? Do you feel it in your heart? You feel it in your abdomen, the back of your neck, forehead? And could you put a hand on that part? Could you put a hand on your chest or on the back of your neck? One thing you could say to yourself, or to that pain or that tightness, is it's okay. Other people, other human beings have had this same experience or something similar. Something I say to myself is, it's okay, sweetheart. It's okay. Or what would you say to a friend? What would you say to a friend who is going through the same exact thing? What kind, encouraging, supportive words would you offer them? And can you say those same things to yourself? Maybe imagining yourself sitting in front of you, like in a chair right in front of you. Can you say it to you? I got you. It's okay. You're strong. You're brave. Can you say that to yourself? And then very slowly, opening your eyes, coming back into the space, and taking those words that you just said to yourself, and can you write them down on your paper or in your notebook or wherever you've got in front of you? Can you write that message to yourself? Maybe write it in your favorite font, or maybe your favorite markers nearby, and you can grab that. But can you write yourself that message as a reminder? A reminder for you. I shared earlier that my favorite mindfulness instructor, Vinnie Ferraro, uses the phrase, "You have nowhere to go, nothing to do, and no one to be." Another phrase that he uses that I really love is, "Right now, it's like this." Because it's going to change. Any moment, this moment is going to change. It's going to become the next moment. But right now, it's like this. So maybe when you're going through something difficult, you can just say to yourself, yeah, right now, it's like this. I actually got to hear him speak a couple of days ago. I'm attending a conference this week online about trauma. And he talked about, I wanted to find it for you, but now I'm not sure I can find it in my notes, but he just talked about the way we treat this moment impacts the next moment. So how are we showing up for this moment? Because then that's going to play out into the next moment. So how are you treating yourself in this moment? Okay. I'm going to invite you to continue with your pen and your paper. I'm going to share this strategy. I'm going to share it. I'm going to talk about one way that I teach it, and you can try it with a friend or a family member, or try it with a colleague at work. But I'm going to explain how you do it as a talking exercise, but then we're going to do it as a writing exercise. So the way it works as a talking exercise is that the two people are facing each other, and you each have a minute. That you set a timer for a minute. And the first person's job is to ask the second person, "Who are you?" So they just say, "Who are you?" And the second person answers. And the first person asks, "Who are you?" And the second person answers. And back and forth for a minute. So I'd be like, "Who are you?" "I'm a mother." "Who are you?" "I'm a daughter." "Who are you?" "I'm an artist." They can be one-word answers. They can be longer answers. "I'm a budding gardener who's mostly getting it wrong, but my tomatoes are doing okay." Or "I'm someone who loves potatoes, especially fried," or you could be more profound, like, "I'm an only child, but I grew up as a sibling, and so I don't identify as an only child." So instead of you working with a partner today, we're going to use it as a writing prompt. And the writing prompt is, "Who are you?" I'm just going to occasionally say, "Who are you?" But while I'm saying it, you're just going to be writing who you are, writing a list of who you are in your notebook or on your pad of paper or on your piece of paper. And I'll just be asking you occasionally. You can write one-word answers. You can write slightly longer phrases or sentences, however you want. It's your list. So here we go. Who are you? 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 And if you're willing, maybe throw in a couple of those answers into the chat. Make sure you're clicking everyone before you throw an answer into the chat. But maybe let's just sort of, we'll call it a waterfall. We're just going to have a list of who's in the room. Typing it into the chat. Who are you? Keep going, just putting a bunch into the chat. I'm going to start reading some of them out loud. Mother, explorer, mother, daughter, artist, friend, quilter, sister, parent, lifelong learner, creative, restless human, mother, spiritual guide, lover, spiritual being. I'm a binge season Netflix watcher, bunny lover, traveler, daughter, enough, dreamer, artist, dog lover, taco lover, therapist, artist, ceramics creator, artist, farmer at heart, messy human, mindfulness practitioner, Zumba dancer, fantastical dancer, learner, an aunt, Christian, creative. I'm thinking they meant dog mom, cat mom. Look at all these people in the room, an advocate. Like we're all these things and we're breathing. Thank you. And we're not just we're not just one thing, we're so many things. And so how does it feel when we're seen for who we are, when we're recognized and celebrated and known for who we are? And how can we create spaces, work environments, home environments, social environments, schools, hospitals, therapy rooms, places where people feel seen, where people feel honored, where people feel celebrated for who they are? What can we do? What strategies can we bring and share? Because we all have so many strengths. We all have so many parts of our identity. We all have so many gifts. And all of those can help make the world a better place if you show up and share all the parts of who you are. I think sometimes people are scared to show who they are because maybe there'll be judgment, or maybe they won't be accepted. And yet, I think all of those things are really what makes us so strong and beautiful and complex and wonderful. So who are you? Try it in the conversation format with a friend, with a colleague, with a family member. Just try it. It's a good one. And the next thing that I actually like to do is to then, with that person that you've just asked them who they are, to draw them. Sorry, I'm having some camera issues today. Oh. So the way this works is it's called blind contour drawing. And blind contour drawing is drawing with your eyes closed. Now, if you're not comfortable closing your eyes, you can look up at the ceiling, or you can look off into the corner, or you can look down at the floor. But the rule is no looking at the paper. You're going to trust your hands and your heart. Your drawing is not going to look anything like what I'm going to ask you to draw in a moment. And the reason I teach it this way is that most people say, and they'll say it out loud, I can't draw. I'll say I can't draw. In general, I don't feel super confident about my drawing, but I love doing blind contour drawing. So here's an example. This is actually two different people that I drew earlier today, but I drew a teacher and I drew a student, and those are my drawings of them. So the person you're going to draw today is you. You're going to draw you. Now I'm going to remove the spotlight. If it makes it more comfortable for you to draw you, and you want to turn your camera on so that you can see you, you can do that. You can put yourself right in the middle of your camera so that you can see yourself. You can even go in, and I'm just going to pin me. You can pin yourself so that you can just see yourself. Or if you have a mirror nearby, you could look at that. Or if you don't want to do either, but you just want to do it from memory, then you can just draw what you think you look like. But the rule is no peeking, no looking. So we're all going to start. So just start and try drawing yourself. What do you look like today? Not what do you wish you looked like. And by the way, the picture is really not going to be very beautiful. Although what I tell grown-ups and even kids, if they know these references, is that these sketches actually end up looking kind of Picasso or Dali-ish because they're just sort of playful and abstract. Capturing your hair, your lips, your nose, your eyes. If you wear glasses, try drawing yourself. And then what were some of the things that you said about yourself when I asked you, who are you? And if you're willing to, write some of those things around the drawing. When you see the drawing, you might laugh. You could write your name on the picture. When you do this with a partner in person, I often have you gift the drawing to the partner with the words around it or with the picture. And if you're willing to turn your camera on, and if you're willing to hold your drawing up. So here's my drawing of myself. I love these abstract drawings. These are fabulous artists. Thank you for sharing them. I like seeing the smiles in the room as well. Thank you so much for sharing those drawings. That's fantastic. Blind contour drawings in general are just a really fun exercise. You don't have to draw yourself. You could draw an animal. You could draw an object in the room. You could draw anything with a blind contour. So try a blind contour just as like a quick little warm up. Like, let's say you're holding a meeting. Have everyone draw something with their eyes closed at the beginning of the meeting, like a staff meeting. Or you're having a party to honor someone for their birthday. Hand out a bunch of index cards and have everyone draw the birthday person, the birthday boy, the birthday girl, birthday human. Have them draw. Have other people write complimentary words about the birthday human around the drawings, and then give them the whole pile. I mean, there's so many ways to just sort of integrate these sweet, small, little strategies, playful, fun, that bring a smile to someone's face. Think about how can you just sort of integrate little tiny moments. You know, being an artist, being creative doesn't have to be this, oh my God, now I'm setting up my studio and I'm taking hours and hours and hours and I don't have time for that, so I can't do it. But where can it just be, oh, I'm going to make a blind contour while I have my breakfast, or I'm going to make a blind contour, you know, when I'm sitting in a cafe waiting for my coffee date, whatever it is, you know, where can you integrate those little things into your life? I'm going to take a pause before we introduce sort of the next concept, the next practice, and just see if there's questions or comments from the group, or if there's anything anyone would like to share. And you can also feel free to type something in the chat if you prefer that. But if there's any questions or comments, I just want to open up the space. Nope. Okay, well, feel free, just in general, you can unmute yourself, you can type in the chat, you can just say, hey, Michelle, I've got a question, you can interrupt me. I totally welcome that. I'm happy to have you here, and I'd love to hear your voices if you want to chime in. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is something called restorative practices. And I'm going to go back to spotlighting myself so you can see the slides a little bit better. So restorative practices have their origins in the indigenous communities. Then they were adopted by the prison system or by the incarceration facilities, and then they were adopted in schools. And restorative practice is really essentially about sitting in circle and having a conversation. It's about building community. It's about responding to harm. I'm trained as a restorative practices facilitator, and restorative practices are 80% proactive and 20% reactive. So they're used as a tool to really build community. That's the biggest piece. If they're not used in that 80% capacity to build community, and they're only used as a reactive to respond to harm, they don't always work. Especially like in a community where people are gathered regularly, like a community like a school or a therapeutic community or where people are gathering together regularly. If it's not used that way, where people are using it to build community, then when they try to restore harm, it's just more difficult to do that. And so we're not going to actually hold a restorative practices circle today. That would ask that everyone turn their cameras on and unmute and so forth. But I really wanted to sort of introduce restorative practices to you so that you know about it. I can answer any questions about it to the best of my ability. But these are typical circle agreements. You respect the sharing protocol. You speak from the heart. You listen from the heart. You trust that you'll know what to say. You have the right to pass. You say just enough. And everything said in the circle stays in the circle. Even what we were doing earlier in the Zoom chat, when we were typing who are our answers to who are you, those are, that was even really essentially a restorative practice. We weren't holding an official circle, but we were sharing collectively. So where are there opportunities? And the sharing protocol in that moment was to type it in the chat. And we did speak from our heart, and hopefully we read from our hearts. And we said just enough. And definitely everything that was said in that short exchange hopefully stays in that short exchange. Well, actually, I read the list out loud, and I have been informed that this video, will be shared later. So, but it's still, when one is creating an intentional restorative circle, everything that's said in the circle stays in the circle. I think of Brene Brown's work. She has the acronym BRAVING, and the V in BRAVING stands for vault. And that, you will respect and keep someone's secret, someone's story, someone's not necessarily secret, but well, sometimes, but if someone confides in you, that you will keep that and not necessarily share it. So that point, think of that. Everything's said in the circle stays in the circle. Another strategy that I'm going to share with you today has its origins in Rumi's poem, The Guest House. It also has its origins in a book, in a style of therapy called Internal Family Systems that was founded by Richard Schwartz 40 years ago. Heidi, you asked me if there would be any books referenced, and this is one of the books that I wanted to reference. Basically, the premise of Richard Schwartz's teachings and his first book, Internal Family Systems, and his most recent book, No Bad Parts, teaches a method of therapy that both one can participate with in therapy with a therapist, or that one can also just sort of focus on with themselves. And the idea is that we all have coping strategies, that we all have habits that we developed as young children when there was potentially an early wounding, some kind of trauma that happened to us, some way in which our needs weren't met. And so we developed what he calls protectors, these parts. I also, as someone with a theater background, I think of them as characters in a play. So we develop these parts that grow up along with us who are protecting us. They could also, I think of them sometimes also just like emotions. So defensiveness could be a part, or anger could be a part, or sadness. I have a part that I refer to as go Gidget. And go Gidget wants me to get a million things done and doesn't want me to rest. And I've got this big to-do list and I've got to get everything done on the to-do list. Or who knows what will happen, but there's no resting until everything's done on the to-do list, until everything's accomplished. Or sometimes, a part might look different. Like I said earlier, I mentioned emotions. One day I was at work a couple of years ago and I was sitting in my office and all of a sudden I felt really, really sad. Just felt incredibly sad. And earlier I was talking about mindfulness and I mentioned my mindfulness practice then helped me to notice or have, develop more compassion for myself. And what it really helped me to do is notice my emotions. They might show up. I might be feeling them really, really strongly, but they're still sort of what Richard Schwartz refers to as the self. The self is calm. The self is curious. The self is compassionate. The self is creative. The self can notice that part. So I still have the self that's like, oh, hey, sadness is here. What do you want, sadness? And in that moment, on that day at work, sadness asked me, can you make me? And so all of a sudden I just grabbed some blue paper and I started tearing it up. And I made this little monster that looked like a monster from Monsters, Inc. With big droopy eyes, little feet at the bottom, and kind of blue fur. It just looked really sad. And I made sadness. And then sadness left or thanked me and left. A colleague and I referred to, and I've heard Richard Schwartz even, it's sort of like your inner preschool, so there's like all these different emotions, all these different ways of sort of acting out, all these different opinions of how you should be living your life, what you should be doing. And our parts, they get activated or they get triggered, especially when something difficult is going on in our life, when we're in the middle of a big transition. Our parts certainly probably got activated during the pandemic. The other origin of this, and I started with it, now I'm circling back to it, is Rumi's poem, The Guest House. So I will read to you. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently empty your house of all its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight, the dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them all in. Be grateful for whatever comes because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. My colleague and I, when we talk about the inner preschool, we also talk about this minivan metaphor. Like, okay, you all get to come along in the minivan, but I'm the driver and you've got to put your seatbelt on. You can't control the radio. You can't control the GPS or the maps. Sometimes you might be acting up so much that I'm going to strap you to the roof, but you're still invited. You're still included. You're always welcomed. Like, how would it be if all the parts of us, the parts that we judge, the parts that we're mean to, the parts that we have no patience for, how would it be if we always treated them like they were invited? And in Richard Schwartz's work, he talks a lot about just sort of sitting with them in the same way that in the mindfulness meditation I had you picture yourself sitting in front of yourself, offering yourself a kind word. He has you literally sit and ask one of your parts a question. Listen to it. Find out what it has to say. Years ago, I was lucky enough to work with an IFS trained therapist, and he taught me this strategy that then I turned into a writing exercise. I mean, well, it was a writing exercise, but now I've turned it into something that's called Everyone's Invited. I will also share this with Heidi to be mailed out to all the participants in the workshop. And we're going to try it right now. So the way Everyone's Invited works is I invite you to think, again, maybe of that situation that you used during the mindfulness meditation, something that you're struggling with, something that you're worried about, something that's top of mind. And I invite you to consider that thing. And I invite you to just first consider it, choose the topic. Then what happens is you see who shows up first. Maybe blame shows up first. Maybe anger shows up first. Maybe worry shows up first. Maybe concern. Maybe gratitude. Who shows up first? And what we're going to do is I'm going to set a timer for 3 minutes, and you're going to write from the perspective of that character. But the rule is that while that character is sort of dictating, while you're recording what they have to say, you're not letting another character interrupt. So just the same way if you were like, say, a kindergarten teacher and you were talking to one student and another one tapped you on the shoulder, you might be like, hold on, I'm talking to Joe right now. It'll be your turn next. So you might say to sadness, hey, anger, hold on. It'll be your turn next. But right now, you're just listening to one part at a time. So any questions at all about this writing strategy? Everyone's invited. Feel free to unmute or type it into the chat. Be happy to respond to any questions. Otherwise, if you feel pretty clear about the instructions and the strategy, I'll set a timer for 3 minutes. Your topic is only you. This writing is private. You're not going to have to share it later. It's really meant as a tool and a resource for you. I'll talk a little bit more about how and when to use it after we practice it. Any questions? Okay. 3 minutes, first character. You can give them a name. They might not be an emotion. They might be like lazy Lizzie or bossy Betty or angry Alan. You know, who's here first and what do they have to say?
Michelle, we just had a question in the chat about repeating the prompt.
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
No
Okay.
worries.
So you are going to consider I'm going to pause the timer. You're going to consider a situation in your life, something that's troubling you, worrying you, upsetting you, exciting you, a big decision you're trying to make, anything at all that's sort of something you think about a lot, that you're kind of like wrestling in your own mind with, or that you're, like I said, trying to make a big decision, or you're upset, or you're worried, or you're angry. You're picking a topic in your life, anything, something that's going on or might happen soon, or, you know, it could still be, you know, like, let's say you know someone in Maui. It could be you're worried about someone you love in Maui. It could be anything at all. I hear there's like potentially a hurricane hitting Southern California. Like it could be that, whatever it is, something that is kind of at the top of your mind. And you're going to write from the voice of someone in your mind who's talking about it. Is that character kind of worried? Is that character angry? Is that character feeling unmotivated? Is that character feeling angry or blameful towards someone else? So you're considering sort of like your own inner emotions, your own inner narrative, and you're just writing from that voice for 3 minutes. But now it's 2 minutes and 20 seconds. And then we'll pause and you'll see who else shows up. Maybe there's a different voice that has a different opinion, like, oh, everything is going to be fine, don't worry. And you write everything they have to say. Maybe gratitude shows up. Wow, I really love my kids. I'm so grateful that they're so resilient. Whatever it is. Okay. But just writing from one perspective at a time. Here we go. Okay, that was 3 minutes. And what you do now is you thank that part. You say, thanks for sharing. Time's up. Next. And you see who's here. And then you write from that perspective for 3 more minutes. Typically, one could go on way longer. One could do 3 characters or 6 characters or however long, but we're only going to try 2 for today. So this is the second round. This is a different voice. This is a different part who has a different attitude about the situation you're considering. Here we go, 3 minutes. When that's 3 minutes, you can say to that next part, thank you for sharing, time's up. When I was originally taught this strategy, I was taught to use it like when things feel difficult, when you're in the middle of a big life transition, when you're, something's happening that sort of you get flooded with all the parts. So like when I was getting ready to move from California to New Mexico, I had an experience where like all the parts were throwing up, not throwing up, although it felt like it, showing up at once. They were all, and I used the phrase earlier, I referenced the guest house. They were all in my guest house at the same time. And they were like, as Rumi says in the poem, clearing your house of all its furniture. They were tearing stuff off the walls. They were like throwing a giant temper tantrum. That's, that is like high alert alarm system going when, a major thing is happening, like a huge life transition. But you can just use it even like, after an argument with a friend or a family member. I was also taught to use it before bed. It's a great sort of way to help with insomnia, to use it just to sit down, give yourself 15 minutes. That's 5 parts that you could sit with in 15 minutes, just by setting a timer with a pen and paper and see who wants to show up. You might be surprised. Again, while one is tapping you on the shoulder while you're writing down the other, just pause and say, you can be next. I hear you. I see you. You can be next, but it's not your turn right now until you get to their turn. It helps to untangle the threads. I also use the phrase, like, I think of all the parts as like a jury sitting around a table. In theater, they call it the 12 angry men, that play. But I think about like people sitting around a table, and again, as I said earlier, they all have an opinion about how you should be living your life or how to proceed. One might be like really mad at, I get mad at my teenager when she's really sassy and rude to me, but then I get sad because I want her to love me. But then I also feel compassion because I realize that her expression of being nasty to me is a form of her own hurting. And then another voice comes in and says, well, then I should help her and I should give her tools. So that's like 4 different parts right there, all responding to one situation, which is having a 15-year-old daughter who's being sassy and rude. So like what's going on in your life that you can use to sort of sit down with and greet all of these different parts with compassion. I want to share a couple of other resources with you before we wrap up for the day. But I want to just pause for a moment and see if there's any comments or questions specifically about the parts work, the Rumi poem, The Guest House, the No Bad Parts, or just anything at all that I've shared in the workshop today so far, and just see if there's anything at all that people want to chime in about, or if you want to, unmute and say what it was like to try out the everyone's invited writing exercise, or ask any questions, comments. Or if you feel like typing into the chat and sharing what it was like to try that out. Someone said it was relaxing, made them breathe more deeply. Nice. Did anyone get any more clarity, or sort of say, oh my God, I didn't even know I felt that way, or, understand some of the nuances between the different characters or parts. It helps with perspective. Thank you, Nina. It seems a great opportunity to really acknowledge your inner thoughts regarding situations. Thank you for sharing. I like the experience of befriending the different characters. Yeah, befriending them. Like if we can befriend ourselves, if we can treat ourselves with kindness, then hopefully we can treat each other with kindness. It made the characters' roles and behaviors sequentially clearer. I found myself cry every now and then as I wrote because it made me realize what I was hiding from myself. Yeah, powerful. It's pretty rare that I lead a workshop where someone doesn't cry. Especially in person when we're sitting and really talking to each other face to face, there could definitely be some tears. And really just tears around our humanity, our shared humanity. I geek out on our shared humanity. I also say I'm a vulnerability junkie, that I just sitting in a room, sitting in a space where people can really talk and share about what's going on with themselves is just really powerful. I want to offer up a couple of referrals, a couple of messages, a couple of gifts for all of you today. One of them is just this message, and this is from Sister Corita Kent, who was an art educator in the 1960s. She was a nun, and then eventually she left being a nun and just became more of a practicing artist. This is one of her pieces, and I just wanted to remind you guys that you're special, you're miraculous, you're unrepeatable, fragile, fearful, tender, lost. You're a sparkling ruby, emerald, jewel, rainbow splendor person. And it's up to you. I just loved that message. She has a lot of really beautiful artwork. I highly encourage you to check out her work. I have only learned about her somewhat recently. I found out about her in this great magazine called Feel Free. There's only been, I think, 4 editions of this magazine that Leanne Ford has put out. And I think Karita Kent was in the very first one. Was where I learned about her. And but you can still find some of her prints like on eBay. She's an amazing artist. Another resource that I wanted to share with you is a film that you can stream online called The Wisdom of Trauma. And it features the work of Dr. Gabor Mate. There's actually a conference this week built around his work and has many, many speakers. I've been attending it. The magazine I mentioned is called Feel Free. I can hold it up actually. This is one of the latest copies, but it's called Feel Free. I found it at Whole Foods of all places, but there's only been 4 editions, but she showcases different artists and different arts practices. And there's even some free art in the back of the magazine that you can tear off and hang on the wall. It's fun. This movie you can access online, you can stream it online. You might have to pay a small fee to stream it, but it's really powerful. It's an incredibly powerful, beautiful, beautiful film that really talks about that, there's sort of trauma, but that trauma itself has an incredible amount of wisdom. I always sort of think about pain, and pain is sort of the way to heal pain is through, to experience it, to feel it. And as it says right here, can our deepest pain be our doorway to healing? And it's just and I guess it says donate to watch the film. So it sounds like you can just make a small donation and watch the film. It's exquisite. And his writing is really powerful as well, and his speaking. So I highly recommend the work of Dr. Gabor Mate. Another resource that I wanted to share out with all of you is that I wrote a book myself. It's called Radiance, The Art of Self-Love. It's only about an hour read. It's big font. It looks like it's laid in one of my artful journals. It's a memoir, it's a musing, it's a map. So I invite you to check that out. I know it's available on Amazon. It's not incredible. It's not super. I think it's $30 on Amazon. I actually don't make a penny from anyone buying it because I self-published and didn't understand all the fees around printing full color books. 100-page full color books, but enjoy it. It's my gift to the world. You're just literally paying for the printing and the shipping and all that. That's my website, creativecompassionate.com. I invite you to stay in touch, to reach out. And I just really want to thank the Arts and Healing Initiative, Heidi and Ping, for having me today. And I'm going to double check the chat if I could share my experience. Oh, that right. Heidi is sharing that. There is a, she shared the Wisdom of Trauma link. Thank you, Heidi, for sharing that. And then there is a form to fill out at the end of the workshop today. So I am going to make myself a little smaller. I don't know. Maybe I'm no longer perfect. I'm not as big on the screen as I was. And just really want to thank everyone for being here today.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and gratitude for leading us through such a powerful mindfulness and practice, kind of identifying practice hope session. I just want to thank all of you for spending a part of your day with us. And we'd like to acknowledge the Los Angeles Department of Arts and Culture. They support this series in part through a couple different programs they have. So we really appreciate that support. As mentioned in the chat, there is a survey. It's quite brief. It does really help us ensure that we're continuing to best serve you all in our Hope community. It will also be in your follow-up email. So look out for that. The resources Michelle mentioned will be there. A link to our bookshop, which has a number of books by our faculty, recommendations, books that have been mentioned in Hope series. And so those are all there to refer to as well. And then we do have a few upcoming series for our sessions in our Hope series. September is available for registration, and then October and November will be up for registration next week, I believe. So we're excited to continue bringing new and interesting topics to all of you. as well as our Mindful Creativity for Resilience retreat, which Michelle is also participating in. So that is at the end of September. It is on a sliding scale. So we want to make it accessible to all, and we really encourage you to check out the speakers, facilitators that day. It's a wide range of expressive arts, and we're really excited to bring that to our community. And we also have our facilitator trainings coming up this fall as well. And as always, if you have questions about any of these, please feel free to reach out to me. And once you receive that resource email, if you have questions there, same. And then I'll be sending you, once the recording is up on YouTube, I also send just a reminder to you about that in case you want to revisit it. I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your weekend, especially if you're in Southern California. I hope we all stay safe and dry, and I look forward to seeing you at a future Hope workshop. Thank you all.